Greetings, everybody. It's Jesse here. I'm gonna come at you with this little video. I'm gonna kind of move kind of fast because this is a pretty in-depth topic, but I'm not gonna go in depth. I'm just gonna cover some interesting things with some current events that's kind of been taking place that some people might not be aware of because they're focusing on this or focusing on that or focusing on just silly events that's going on in the internet community or whatever. But while all that's going on, I wanted to bring you up to this website, which has been around roughly since 2002, as this states right here. And it's called End Poverty 2015. Now, there's obviously a counter here. And what this is essentially is, if you have heard the phrase climate change, global warming, Agenda 21, sustainable development, then all of this ties in with this End Poverty 2015 Millennium campaign. And what it is the UN Millennium campaign was established by the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan in 2002 in order to support citizen participation in the Achieving Millennium Development Goals adopted by 189 world leaders from rich and poor countries as part of the Millennium Declaration, which was signed in 2000. Since 2002, we have worked with UN partners and key global constituencies such as civil society, parliamentarians, faith groups, and youth to inspire people from around the world to take action for the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals by 2015. So here we have faith groups, World Council of Churches, religious institutions, and these types of things. Everybody's involved with this. Now, the campaign advocates for increased efforts to effectively promote greater support for the MDGs, as it is more critical than ever that they remain a priority. MDGs is Millennium Development Goals. And the political and public agenda. We work underlining, notice that, political and public agenda. We work underlying their impact and that they continue to be a sound and worthwhile investment for all in the fight against global poverty. Additionally, the UN Millennium Campaign is engaged in the post-2015 process. What's going to happen post-2015, basically. Headed by Corinne Woods, the UN Millennium Campaign is based in New York with teams working in Africa and Europe. Now, who is Corinne Woods? Well, let's go ahead and just get a little bit of her profile, and then we're going to see some key things pop out, hopefully, to those that view my channel. I know it's a very low number, but still. Corinne J. Woods, born May 28, 1954, served as the 44th Lieutenant Governor of the U.S. state of Illinois from 1999 to 2003. It seems like Illinois seems like a very interesting state. That's where Obama came from and these types of things when he was senator there and whatnot. Graduating Phi Beta Kappa from the University of Illinois and Loyola University School of Law. That one should jump red flags out at you as to who and what is behind this. Wood was named General Counsel to the Illinois Commissioner of Banks and Trusts. Okay, so what is the UN Millennium Goals? Well, what they are is the MDGs are the world's time-bound and quantified targets for addressing extreme poverty in its many dimensions: income, poverty, hunger, disease, lack of adequate shelter, and exclusion, while promoting gender equality, education, and environmental sustainability. They are also basic human rights, the rights of each person on the planet to health, education, shelter, and security. Gender equality. We see a lot of that going on between, in the schools, gender equality. Where it almost has become politically, where it's almost becoming politically incorrect to use the term boy and girl. Now there's things coming out that, you don't have his or her bathrooms anymore. You have his, hers combined bathrooms and stuff like that. Just a lot of crazy stuff going on with that. So obviously these are the goals. You have eradicate extreme hunger and poverty, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equality and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases, ensure environmental sustainability. That's where Ebola comes in, with the Ebola crisis going on. Ensure environmental sustainability, develop a global partnership for development. Now, again, when you look at these, like for example, eradicate extreme hunger and poverty, that all sounds nice and good. But if you look at the encyclicals of Pope John Paul II, with Rerum Novarum, what that basically was the redistribution of wealth, taking from one and giving to another. And what essentially is that, regardless if it's, the Robin Hood mentality of taking from the rich and giving to the poor? What is that? It's called stealing, it's called theft. And obviously that's against the laws of God, that's against the commandments of God, and these types of things. So we got to understand the concept of the spiritual matters at work here. What's being eradicated, okay? And so this is just basically a quick background of this. And what came out recently, a few days ago, maybe about a week or so ago, is this. Pope Francis's edict on climate change will anger deniers in U.S. churches. Okay. So he has been, this is out of the Guardian. So he has been called the Superman Pope, and it would be hard to deny that Pope Francis has had a good December, cited by President Barack Obama as a key player in the thawing relations between the U.S. and Cuba. The Argentinian pontiff followed that by lecturing his cardinals on the need to clean up Vatican politics. But can Francis achieve a feat that has far eluded secular powers and inspired decisive action on climate change? Excuse me. It looks as if he will give it a go. In 2015, the Pope will issue a lengthy message or an encyclical dealing with just this topic. Now, I'm really anxious for when this encyclical comes out because I really want to look at it. I don't know when it's going to come out, but it is going to happen. On the subject to the world's 1.2 billion Catholics, give an address to the UN General Assembly and call a summit of the world's main religions. So this is and this all goes right in line with this whole End Poverty 2015. It's very interesting that he is coming out with this huge statement. The reasons for such frenetic activity, says Bishop Marcello Serrando, Chancellor of the Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Sciences, is the Pope's wish to directly influence next year's crucial UN climate meeting in Paris, when countries will try to conclude 20 years of fraught negotiations with a universal commitment to reduce emissions. According to Vatican insiders, Francis will meet other faith leaders and lobby politicians at the General Assembly in New York in September, when countries will sign up to new anti-poverty and environmental goals. So not only do we have these goals, there's going to be new goals. I'm very interested to see what these goals are going to be. So that's out of the Guardian. Let's take you to Climate Progress. And there are some very interesting things being said here. Okay. Again, Francis is expected to tell the planet's 1.2 billion Catholics why acting on climate change is essential to the faith, using an influential church document called an encyclical. Okay, this has been long rumored, but will reportedly be released to the world's 5,000 bishops and 400,000 priests following a papal visit to the hurricane-damaged city of Tacloban in the Philippines. I gotta find out when he plans on visiting that area. And if we go down a little further, this is where it gets interesting. Goes on to say, this article goes on to say, while it isn't certain what exactly he will tell these leaders, it will likely be similar to what he has been telling Catholics everywhere since the beginning of his papacy earlier this year. Francis told a massive crowd in Rome, quote, this is out of Pope Francis's mouth, "If we destroy creation, capital C, mind you, creation will destroy us." Let me read that again. If we destroy creation, creation will destroy us. I know there's a passage in Scripture that says, talks about people who worship the creation rather than the creator. Okay, so obviously there's something going on here. He has called the destruction of the rainforest a sin. And under his leadership, the church held a 5-day summit with scientists, economists, philosophers, astronomers, and other experts to explore ways the Catholic Church could address climate and sustainability. There's that interesting word, sustainability. Now we're going to kind of go a little bit behind the definition, the open but false definition of what sustainable development is here in just a moment. But I wanted to point this out, is he has called the destruction of the rainforest a sin. Now, according to the Bible, sin is transgression of the law. Which law? Well, the law, the commandments of God, the 10 Commandments written in stone with the finger of God, and these types of things. Over and over and over again, it talks about, in the New Testament, regarding sins and these types of things, adultery and lusts and so on and so forth. Nowhere in Scripture does it talk about the destruction of the rainforest as sin. Okay, not saying it's good, but it's not but there's nowhere saying that sin is destruction of the rainforest. Okay. Sin is transgression of the law, and by what Paul means by the law is the commandments of God, and these types of things. So obviously, Francis is holding, as well as other popes, and we're going to get into some quotes here in a moment, as well as other, as well as popes in the past have usurped authority over God and His law. And the reason why they can use the word sin is because they can change laws whenever they want, and they can basically say what is and what isn't sin according to their morality. All right. So let's go ahead and look at a couple quotes from some words of the beast here. Vatican claims power to change God's laws. This is a quote from S.C. Masna, Storia della Domenica, 1969, page 366-367. Quote, "Not the creator of universe," in Genesis 2:1-3, but the Catholic Church can claim the honor of having granted men a pause to his work every 7 days. Here's another one. "The Pope is of great authority and power that he can modify, explain, or interpret even divine laws. The Pope can modify divine law, since his power is not of man, but of God. And he acts as vice-regent of God upon earth." Lucius Ferraris Prompta Bibliotheca Papa, Article 2, which is translated. Here's another one. Quote, "The Pope has the power to change times, to abrogate laws, and to dispense with all things, even the precepts of Christ. The Pope has the authority and often exercised it to dispense with the command of Christ." Here's another one. They, quote, "dispense with the command of Christ." When the Catholic Church is asked, "Why do you feel you have the power, authority, and ability to change Scripture to match your traditions?" they answer, quote, "Had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority." Reverend Stephen Keenan, A Doctrinal Catechism on the Obedience Due to the Church, Chapter 2, page 174. Here's another one. "The authority of the Church could therefore not be bound to the authority of the Scripture, because the Church had changed the Sabbath into Sunday, not by command of Christ, but by its own authority." Canon and Tradition, page 263. So, again, this is why Pope Francis can literally come out and say, The creation is essentially God, which is essentially a pantheistic type of mentality, and therefore, by destroying the rainforest, you're going against God. You're destroying God in a sense, so therefore it is a sin. Because sin is transgression of the law, but according to the church, which law? And whose morality? If we go to a couple scriptures in Daniel 7:8, it says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Skip further down to Daniel 7:25, it says, And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. That certainly sounds like what we just read, doesn't it? A lot of people are looking for a man of sin, or a little horn, or a man of lawlessness, or the Antichrist to come in the near future, or to come in the future after the rapture. Well, I'm not going to say too much on that, but let's go ahead and kind of go over what this sustainability is. Here's a site called the Green Agenda. I'm not going to go over everything here, but this is dealing with the Club of Rome, which is basically the kind of like the movement behind the scenes that is really facilitating this whole end poverty thing. And here we see names like Ted Turner, George Soros, Tony Blair, Deepak Chopra, Henry Kissinger, Miguel Gorbachev, Al Gore. I mean, obviously, you know who he is. Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter. All these names are all members of this Club of Rome. And the concept of environmental sustainability was first brought to widespread public attention in 1972 by the Club of Rome in their book entitled The Limits to Growth. The official summary can be read here. The report basically concluded that the growth of the human population and an increase in prosperity would cause an ecological collapse within the next 100 years. So is this sustainable development just any outward appearance? When you look at the outward definitions, when you just type it in Google, when it talks about just meeting the needs of poverty-stricken nations, is that just what it is? Well, let's kind of look at a couple quotes from this book. Quote, if the present growth trends in world populations, industrializations, pollution, food production, and resource depletion continue unchanged, the limits to growth on this planet will be reached sometime within the next 100 years. The most probable result will be a rather sudden and uncontrollable decline in both population and industrial capacity. It is possible to alter these growth trends and to establish a condition of ecological and economic stability that is sustainable far into the future. The state of global equilibrium could be designed so that the basic material needs of each person on Earth are satisfied and each person has an equal opportunity to realize his individual human potential. Okay, here we have this aspect because, let's face it, in the eyes of the world, how are you going to make it to the point where you can meet basic material needs for each person? Well, according to sustainability, you would have to decline the population. Okay? The overwhelming growth in world population caused by the positive birth rate loop is a recent phenomenon, a result of mankind's very successful reduction of worldwide mortality. The controlling negative feedback loop has been weakened, allowing the positive loop to operate virtually without constraint. There are only 2 ways to restore the resulting imbalance. Either the birth rate must be brought down to equal the new, lower death rate, or the death rate must rise again. Ever wonder why abortion is being so pushed in these types of things? This is all part of this whole depopulation thing. Here's another quote. The result of stopping population growth in 1975 and industrial capital growth in 1985 with no other changes is that population and capital reach constant values at a relatively high level of food, industrial output, and services per person. Eventually, however, resource shortages reduce industrial output and the temporarily stable state degenerates. Man possesses for a small moment in his history the most powerful combination of knowledge, tools, and resources the world has ever known. He has all that is physically necessary to create a totally new form of human society. Did you get that? He, that is man, has all that is physically necessary to create a totally new form of human society. What are they initially saying there? Well, if you read behind the lines there, that's basically saying that you are a creator. You can create this new form of human society. You just have to knuckle under. One that would be built to last for generations. And then also by saying that man can create this new form of human society is essentially a serpent type language being put out there saying that you can be as gods. The two missing ingredients are a realistic long-term goal that can guide mankind to equilibrium society and the human will to achieve that goal. Another one, last quote. Without such a goal and a commitment to it, short-term concerns will generate the exponential growth that drives the world system toward the limits of the earth and ultimate collapse. So this is what they need. They need this ultimate collapse in order to bring the population down and then obviously get some form of control. But I believe that whole depopulation is going to come in a different aspect. But I'm not going to get into that just now. Probably wait on another video on that. With that goal and that commitment, mankind will be ready now to begin a controlled, orderly transition from growth to global equilibrium. So, as you can see, even back in 1972, the club considered modern industrial societies to be completely unsustainable. They state that even if population was frozen at 1975 levels and industrial activity at 1985 levels, then the Earth's ecosystem would still ultimately collapse. The Club of Rome has not changed these views in the slightest. In fact, in the last 3 decades, their warnings have become increasingly more urgent and alarmist. They call this imminent collapse the world problematic, and their proposed solution the world resolutic. So, there you have it. This is basically the crux of the matter behind the term sustainable development. And this is, behind the term of this website, End Poverty 2015, the UN Millennium Development Goals. And this is obviously why Pope Francis has a hand in this, because, he is basically the official world leader, as far as spiritual and political. He has basically the final say in anything. And he also has the ability to redefine what sin is, because he can redefine what the law is according to his morality, not the morality of the Bible and the morality of the commandments of God. Okay? And obviously throughout these quotes I was able to show you that. So I figured I'd come and bring this out about this whole climate change and these types of things. That it's more than what people make it out to be, of just a simple global warming fraud. Which it is one big hoopla of a lie. I understand that, but it goes beyond what we are being told. It goes beyond the whole initiation of the word Earth Day, that we have every March or whatever. It goes beyond the whole reduce, reuse, recycle, save the plant. It goes beyond that, and that's what I just kind of scratched the surface on. There's a lot of other people that are more knowledgeable in this department that can get into it further. but I figured I'd just scratch the surface and tie scripture in, because obviously it does include the man of sin. It does include Antichrist. So I figured this was really kind of important to bring about. So until next time, truth be told, truth be known, stay safe. God bless. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.